You're listening to Inside the Village, where all news is local and no topic is off limits.
So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley. Hey, bully in the alley. So help
Welcome
me,
to
Bob,
another
it's
edition
bully in
of
the alley.
Inside the Village, alongside Michael Friscolani, editor-in-chief. Here at Village Media, I'm Scott Sexsmith, and we have some exciting news, a big reveal.
Oh, I got a special box in the mail.
Yes, always exciting to get a special box in the mail. First of all, big shout out to executive producer Derek Turner for his creativity for our True North Mortgage mugs that he gave us last week. TrueNorthMortgage.ca, by the way, where you'll get great advice and save a pile of cash. We've whined long enough that we wanted some real swag.
Mm-hmm.
And you got this great box in the mail. And look what it contained.
Look at that, eh?
Hand that off to Derek. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, Derek.
It's official.
These are beauties.
They are.
The
Terrific.
sponsorship is real.
Yeah. True North Mortgage, the best of a bank and broker. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Appreciate the support. All right. How you doing? All fired up for another episode?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm feeling good.
Good. I'm glad you're feeling good. Not feeling good is not an option.
Yes, that's right.
We got a big show coming up. We're going to talk about airlines and all of the hell that is going on surrounding that industry. And there's a lifeguard shortage in Ontario. We'll talk about that. But first, the first word to Frisco, and an important story from James Hopkin out of Sioux today, and the topic of the latest big read.
Yeah, it's important to remind everybody that we're doing these big reads, a longer form journalism here at Village Media. I think we're on number 5 that we've published. These come out every 2 weeks, sort of a deeper look that goes beyond the headlines. And the latest installment is from James at Sioux today. He wrote about a little girl, Emma Lafford from Garden River First Nation, who was taken to a residential school in the early 1900s. And a few years later, she was dead, and her family essentially had no idea what happened to her for more than a century. And James's story sort of pieces together a relative's search for answers and sort of the detective work that went into finding what happened to her. And it's a fascinating journey at a time when we're talking about issues of reconciliation and truth. And it's a real window into one family's pain that they've endured from the legacy of residential schools. It's definitely a must-read, and we know we throw that word around a lot, must-read, that term around a lot, but this is really something you want to take some time to take a look at.
Yeah, it certainly is, and just some terrific work by James. All right, let's get set to fire up another episode of Inside the Village. The airline industry is just run amok lately with all kinds of issues and cancellations, and we're going to get to the bottom of it, and we'll do so right after this.
From newsmakers to celebrities to other prominent guests, you'll find them all on Village Media's new interview series, Up Close and Personal. Join host Scott Sexsmith as he goes one-on-one with well-known Canadians to hear their story. Up Close and Personal. Look for it on your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
Welcome back to Inside the Village. Alongside Michael Friscolani, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Air travel in Canada and for the most part around the world is a mess right now. We're pleased to be joined by Gábor Lukács. Gábor is in Budapest and joins us on the show. Welcome to Inside the Village.
Good afternoon.
So you head up a advocacy group, Air Passenger Rights. You run a Facebook group to help passengers resolve disputes with airlines and regulators in Canada's travel industry. You must be incredibly busy right now.
It is insane. We are overwhelmed.
Could you speak to that? I mean, what the emails every minute coming in from passengers stuck at the airport?
Pretty much. We try to guide people to our Facebook group, and within the Facebook group, we have to really carefully pick the posts that we are going to deal with. But right now, I have 142 pending posts that I need to read and then approve, and then give passengers some information and guidance, point them in the right direction.
Well, we'll try not to keep you so you can get to that important work. But I know it's probably a very long story, but how did you get into this world? What motivated you to want to be an advocate for passengers?
I never wanted to be a passenger advocate. It happened.
Tell us about it.
It just happened. As an academic, and also as someone who wasn't born in Canada, I've been traveling quite a lot. And I've just seen how passengers are treated by airlines and how much airlines disobey the law, disobey the rules to which they are so happy to refer when it is to their advantage. But when it is actually to the passenger's advantage, they are becoming quite forgetful. So one of my first interactions with airlines was when back in Halifax, they sold me a ticket. I was going to a conference, knowing that the instrumental landing system for one of the runways would be shut down for renovation for that summer. And it's Halifax, you get lots of fog in the summer. So needless to say, the flight was delayed and then canceled, and I was rerouted. I was delayed by 26 hours to the destination, and I decided to take it to court.
And you won?
Yes, I did. The airline didn't even show up. So it was one of those quite easy first victories. Mm-hmm. And then I had a couple more instances like this when I was going to another conference that was from Winnipeg. I missed the whole conference because the aircraft broke down, which, it happens. But there was a flight just 2 check-in counters away from my flight, but they refused to rebook me on that. Why? Incompetence, lack of proper instructions, not clear, but I wasn't able to make it to my conference.
So, Gábor, when you watch what's going on now, what we've seen in the last few weeks at Canadian airports, what's happening? I mean, there's a lot of fingers to point, but who's to blame? What's going on?
The problem is the airlines. The airlines have sold way more tickets than the infrastructure, the network is able to support currently. And of course, I'm not referring just to the airline's own employees. I'm sure that pilots, flight attendants, baggage handlers are doing their very best. It's not the workers that are the problem, but there's only so much they can do. And the management, the airlines, top brass, sold way more tickets and promised to deliver way more flights than actually it's feasible with the current level of staffing at the airports. And that includes CBSA and CASA, which is a constraint like anything else.
So why? I mean, it's an obvious question, but why would they do that?
That's a question I would love to see those airline executives being put on a witness stand and answer to the public and perhaps answer to members of parliament. It baffles me. Because the flights that we see now being canceled are all the flights that should have never been sold to begin with.
And it's basically because they're overselling these flights and they knowing they're not going to have enough staff, enough people to operate them?
They're overselling not the flights, but their capacity. It's a bit different. Mm-hmm. It's not that every seat is sold on the flight and they sell tickets beyond the number of seats available on the flight. They sell flights beyond the capacity available at the given airport or available through their facilities. Mm-hmm. But it's a very similar, although not identical problem. Same economic issue.
So what are some of the horror stories you're hearing then from people who are contacting your group?
Some people ending up sleeping in the floor of an airport with kids. People who may have to go to a funeral. I'm just trying to not look at the emotions and just focus on the facts, because it would be overwhelming even for me to see the amount of suffering it's causing. So I just look at, okay, this is the situation, this is what you have to do, and ultimately what I encourage passengers to do is not put up with it. And people should not just feel that they are helpless, because they're not. If every 10th passenger would take airlines to smoke claims court over this, it would be over very, very quickly, because it would create such a pressure on the airlines that they would have to some way settle with the passengers, settle with the public. The trouble is that we have a government which does not enforce the law. The laws are in place. They're not great. The Canadian air passenger protection regulations are really dismal compared to the European gold standard. But we are dealing with such clear situations. It's obvious that airlines are at fault here. It's obvious that it is within their control. Nobody put a gun in their head and told them you have to sell this many tickets.
Here's the thing that I can't seem to wrap my head around, and maybe you can shed some light on it for me. If I transact with an airline, I book a seat to fly somewhere. They've taken my money. They've provided me with a reference number or a booking reference number. I show up, and I'm told that I've been bumped from my flight. How is that legal? How can they do that when they've taken my money? They've provided me with a confirmation number. I've held up my end, but they don't have to. I've never understood how that can work.
That is something that we need to look into the contract of carriage, which contemplates such situations that they are overselling a flight. But what is happening now is far worse than overselling a flight, because normally if a flight is being oversold in a responsible manner, then it is based on the notion that you're going to have a few percentage of the passengers being no-shows for various reasons, personal reasons, and therefore you don't want that plane to be, their seats to be empty. You can put the other people. And if you do the math right, and statistically, you are going to, in most cases, not have to bump anybody. And when you do bump someone, they get a really hefty compensation, and that's kind of everybody is happy. But what happened now is it's not a situation where they didn't expect people to show up. Rather, they sold way more tickets than, even with no shows that occasionally happens, the infrastructure would be able to handle.
Now, the cancellation rate is escalating, it seems, by the minute, particularly from Air Canada, who I believe just recently announced that they're canceling some 9,500 flights over the summer. Can we expect to see more and more of that from other airlines?
I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, mostly from Canadian Airlines. WestJet seems to be also reducing service, as I understand from some of their announcements. It is just a situation where the airlines are now coming back to reality. They have been selling fictitious flights. It feels as if they have been selling you just a piece of paper where they promise to transport you, but they don't have even the plane there, don't have the pilot there. In this case, the physical aircraft are there. I don't believe that there's any mischief there, but they just didn't have the staffing, and even if they had the crew, they didn't have the infrastructure in place, and they should have known or actually knew that the infrastructure wasn't in place. It's something akin to selling you a ticket to an airport knowing that the airport's runway would be shut down for renovation for that particular day of flight.
Mm-hmm. You talk about passenger rights. Obviously, that's the name of your organization. There's a lot of devil in the details, but what are our rights? I mean, do they have to give me my money back? Do they have to put me on a flight in a certain amount of time? What's my right as a passenger?
So let's talk now about these cancellations, which are so clearly within the carrier's control. Let's leave snowstorms and aircraft breakdowns to a different day. When a flight is canceled for reasons within the carrier's control, and let's talk about large carriers like Air Canada and WestJet, for example, then they have to, first of all, try to rebook you on their own network as quickly as possible and within 9 hours of your original departure time. After that, so they cannot put you in an earlier flight. They try to do it to passengers to avoid paying compensation because, we put you in an earlier flight, no delay, good luck. But actually, it's not consistent with the law to try to put you in an earlier flight. They have to put you in a later flight, and it has to be within 9 hours. That's the first option. If they cannot do that on their own network, then they have to find you the next available flight, the fastest available route on flights of any carrier, including those with whom they have no commercial agreement. And that means that by the law, the airline has to go out and buy you a ticket on a competitor. Now, it's not happening in practice because airlines are sabotaging the law and the government is not enforcing the law. Mm-hmm. Let me just mention that under the law, the government, the Canadian Transportation Agency, could issue up to $25,000 in monetary penalty to airlines that break the law for each incident, and that's on top of what airlines owe to passengers. It's not happening.
No.
So in terms of other rights of passengers, if you don't like the alternative that they're offering you and the alternative meets the legal requirements, you can still say, you know what, I'm not traveling, give me back my money. And then they have to give back your money plus $400 under the APPR. Mm-hmm. Again, they're going to drag their feet about this $400. They will try to come up with all sorts of excuses, but it is owed to you currently.
Yeah, because we're
another option that you have.
Sorry, go ahead.
The other option that you have is that if they refuse to offer you a flight that meets the APPR's requirements, I would suggest passengers to go out, buy a ticket on your own, and then make the airline pay for it in small claims court.
Mm-hmm. Which, again, is a lot of work on the passenger. They have to go to small claims court. I'm sure that's not happening in droves.
It is, and that's what the airlines are exploiting. What we are really seeing is airlines, and business in general, taking advantage of Canadians' good nature, of people generally not wanting to be litigious, not wanting to be seen as litigious, and not really having the time or willing to put in the time to take airlines or other large business to task. But it is harming the society as a whole. It is not a victimless crime, what is happening, because it also harms consumer confidence, which is an asset. It harms the whole travel industry, not just airlines. And ultimately, it harms the economy because people will be less willing to actually risk spending money because there's no guarantee that they're going to get what they pay for.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever had FaceTime with the CEO of Air Canada, for example? And if you could do that, what would you say to him today if you could talk to him for 2 minutes?
I don't envy the situation of, say, Air Canada's CEO, because their job is to maximize profit for the shareholders. All these platitudes about serving the public, that's really part of him or her doing their job for any CEO to get to maximize profit. They are not hired there to help the public. They're hired there and they're paid by shareholders to make sure that the dividends are the maximum. So it is the job of regulators to ensure that while, of course, shareholders are entitled to their profit, that profit is not earned by shortchanging passengers in a manner that is contrary to the law. And that's where the problem lies. That currently, the current system at least tolerates, if not encourages, airlines to break the law. Because if there are no consequences to breaking the law, only benefits, then the rule of profit dictates that they will break the law, apologize to the media, and things will go unchanged.
Gábor, you're in Budapest, so you're obviously no stranger to air travel. I'd have to ask this: the gate agent or ticket agent must run when they see you coming?
Actually, not. Usually what happens is that they take me aside and say, I don't kind of tell you it's in public, but actually appreciate what you're doing, because we really hate it when we have to tell passengers that the flight is overbooked, or we have to tell them that they have to be in a different flight. I have no beef with gate agents, and I obviously advise people to be professional and nice to people who are professional and nice. It doesn't mean that you don't necessarily document what is happening if there is an issue because you need it for your rights. But the problem is not the people at the gate, or not necessarily not the crew. The problem is their bosses. The problem is with airlines management, who often expect from those employees things that are virtually impossible. And I have a lot of sympathy for those employees, even when they may be causing some challenges for passengers.
It's always the bosses. Except ours, for the record. Ours is a good boss. Just want to get that out there. Gábor Lukács, president of the group Air Passenger Rights, speaking to us from Budapest today. Thanks very much for the insight, and safe travels back to Canada.
Thank you very much for having me.
Coming up next on Inside the Village, there's a lifeguard shortage in the province of Ontario. We'll find out why and what's being done about it with Barbara Byers from the Lifesaving Society. That's next on Inside the Village.
She had my heart, oh, very nearly.
For the latest in in-depth features and enterprise journalism from your local writers at Village Media, be sure to check out The Big Read. The Big Read. It's the full story behind the headlines. Look for The Big Read on your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
It's bully in the alley. Hey, bully in the alley. So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley.
Welcome back to Inside the Village alongside Michael Friscolanti. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Pleased to be joined on the program now by Barbara Byers, a senior research officer with the Lifesaving Society of Ontario, a water safety organization. Barbara, welcome to Inside the Village. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So we understand, Barbara, that there's a lifeguard shortage in the province. What's going on? What's causing this?
Well, there's a lifeguard shortage in Ontario, in Canada, in North America, and colleagues tell me in Europe as well. Essentially, as you know, we've all experienced labor shortages in our life, whether you're at the airport, you want to get a passport, in a store, going to restaurants and so on. It's there's also a labor shortage with regards to lifeguards and swim instructors. Essentially, if you go back in time to just over 2 years ago, March 2020, when
do we have to go there, Barbara? I don't know if I want to go there.
It's a dark time. It was a dark time, and so everything kind of closed down. We were told to go home, work from home, except for essential services. So no surprise, all the pools were closed, and many of the staff were let go. Lost their job, outsourced, whatever the term is. So they're all gone. They've found a new career, or they're doing other things. And the staff that were at the pools who still had their job were redeployed. Many of them went to work, do vaccine clinics or contact tracing, arenas, cutting grass, all kinds of things. So they were gone. for just over 2 years. Now, some pools opened in between, not much instruction, a little bit of public swim or lane swim, but skeletal staff, and it was on and off and on and off for 2 years. So this spring, late winter, it was like, okay, we're going to open up. We open up all the pools, and we need to open all the outdoor pools, and we need to get staff for the beaches. So it's been a scramble to get staff to work at all these pools and the beaches with a smaller pool of staff to work from. So it's been challenging. It's been very competitive to try and get enough staff. And then you add to that youth who may have taken their pre-lifeguarding courses. As you can imagine, you have to take a number of courses to be a lifeguard and a swim instructor. Your pre-lifeguarding course, you learn to have to be a good swimmer, then you take your, say, bronze medallion when you're 13, bronze cross at 14, national lifeguard at 15, and so on. So for 2 years, those 12, 13, 14-year-olds, they couldn't take those pre-courses. So now they're 15. And they have to take all those other courses before they can become a lifeguard. So the pipeline or pathway is pretty empty for new staff, for new candidates to become lifeguards. And you have to make sure your lifeguard certification is up to date. So you have to go to a clinic. So blah, blah, blah. A lot of things conspired to make this a really difficult time. And there's a real competition for jobs. Like there's lots of industries that are looking to hire people. So these former lifeguards or potential new lifeguards have many choices to choose from. And so that makes it difficult as well. So a combination, it's a short-term problem for this summer because of course the beaches and all the outdoor pools add to the requirements, but also it's a medium-term and long-term problem as well.
Is there some benefits for the actual lifeguards? Are some of them getting more money than they may have gotten because there's such a shortage?
Well, I think they should. There's talk about it. I don't know if it's actually happening. I know some municipalities, I think Brampton is one, and I think City of Vancouver is another, where they're offering to pay for the training for lifeguards. It's about $1,000 if you take all the courses and so on. So they're offering to pay for the training, which won't help find a lifeguard for tomorrow, but it'll help fill that pipeline. I've heard there's some talk of increasing the wages, but I don't know anything specific. But what I do know is that the differential between minimum wage, which is about $15, and a lifeguard's wage, which is like $15, $16, $17, is very small. And that wage for a lifeguard swim instructor, I don't think, the Lifesaving Society doesn't believe that it really takes into account all the training and the money you have to pay to take the courses, never mind the significance and the gravitas of the job to be a lifeguard and a swim instructor, and your role, which is to keep the public safe around the water. So there is talk, and I think they need to increase that wage difference to in some way represent what that training costs and represents in time.
Barbara, what are you hearing from cities? Any horror stories, challenges? I'm guessing that if you don't have lifeguards that can oversee and keep a close eye on things, that there could be facilities and pool closures.
Exactly. So it's two things. So beaches. Many municipalities have some beaches that they have lifeguards on, popular busy beaches, and for certain hours and certain days. So if there isn't enough staff, what that means is not all beaches will have lifeguards, or not all beaches will have lifeguards for 7 days a week, or not all beaches will have lifeguards for, say, 10 hours a day. So that's a concern. That's a public safety concern, because the safest place to swim is where lifeguards are working, especially on a beach. And so if people often go to beaches where there are no lifeguards, sometimes because they don't want someone telling them what they should do. But we do know many people, especially with children, want to go where the lifeguards are working. So that's a concern, because a big part of what lifeguards do is prevention. So there they are in their tower, and they see a little toddler going in the water. The parents are distracted. They're reading their book. They're looking at their phone, and they'll call over to the parents, say, look, your child's in the water. You need to put your phone down. You need to watch them carefully. You should get a life jacket. Maybe we have some here you can borrow, and so on. So they're educating the public, and they're looking out for the safety. There might be someone who's a non-swimmer, and they're going into a deeper area or an area with a drop-off. They can tell that person's a non-swimmer from what they've seen. They'll pull them over and say, that's not a safe place. You should go here. It's safer. So all of those prevention things lifeguards do is really important. That prevents drownings. Plus, of course, when there's a need for a rescue, every second counts. So if the lifeguards are watching, they see it happen, or they're alerted that there's a problem, they'll go out very, very quickly, and every second counts. So no lifeguards, that is definitely a public safety issue. Now, in terms of pools, it's more of a public relations issue, and it's more of a social issue, because the pools can't open if the lifeguards are not there, because the Ontario health regulations, or every provincial regulation, every state regulation, requires that you have to have lifeguards in a public pool. So that's very disappointing. I mean, we've gone through 2 years, and many people think, hey, last summer, yeah, my pool was open, but it was just certain hours, and I had to go online, I had to register, and people just want to show up with their family and go for a swim. So this year we thought, it's going to be different. So that's a concern. And I'm concerned about those pools in the low income areas, because for kids, the pool is their summer. Yeah. That's where they hang out. When I was a lifeguard back in the day, you see kids who come every day, and you may say you're babysitting. Well, you are, but they're in a safe place. They're in a healthy place. There's adults supervising them, and they have a lot of fun. So I am concerned that those pools, if they're not open, that makes for a really, crummy summer for those kids, because they don't have backyard pools to go to. They don't have, trips or nice camps to go for overnight. So we'll see what happens. But it's like the Hunger Games. It's trying to get those lifeguards and trying to get them, hire them, and get them to stay. So it's a short-term problem, and it's a long-term problem.
Yeah, you make a great point. I was thinking that too. There's a particular pool in our community that I was thinking, man, I hope that one actually opens with it, because that's a place where people go in the neighborhood every day, and like you said, the same group of kids, and it's a lifeline in a lot of ways, right? It's something for a place for them to be. Yeah. And you're hearing from municipalities that those kind of pools are at risk?
I haven't heard any specifics. I hear, we have just 80% of what we need. And, they need more than 80%. They need like 120%, because, people get sick or they book off work. And of course, with COVID too, I mean, there's more of a sick factor, people not able to work. So things have just sort of gotten started. I know in some municipalities, Toronto, Ottawa, they've had to cancel some swim instruction because they don't have enough swim instructors as well. So I think, it's a scramble. I think if they could increase the wages, I think it's a good idea.
Is there a debate to be had? I mean, it seems like a really important job, lifeguarding, right? I mean, it should be one maybe we should be paying more for them and attract more candidates.
Back in the day when I was a lifeguard, I won't tell you how many years ago that was, there is a real differential between, I was working in retail, and I thought, and I was in high school, and I thought, this is ridiculous. I could teach swimming, which is more satisfying, and I could earn 3 times as much. Okay.
3 times.
So,
wow.
Yeah. So in time now, that minimum wage has gone up, which is great, but the differential has not. And I think it needs to, and I think it's only right that it does. And I think it's one of those things, like in many parts of our life, when something stops, when you don't have that lifeguard job, you don't have that swim instructor job, and then now you can go back, it causes you to think about it and reevaluate it. And I think employers have to make sure they make it as attractive as it is, and as important as it is, because it's a great job. It's fun. It's nice to be outside if you can. I know many people, myself included, say it's one of the best jobs I ever had back in the day. But also, it's a job where you learn critical decision-making skills. You will learn how to deal with crisis under pressure. You know how to do first aid. You know how to work with other people. Really great skills that will help you in your future. Many lifeguards become paramedics, go into medicine, nursing. Many instructors become teachers and so on. So it's a really great job. But so we have to sell that too, I think, and pay them. Yeah.
Barbara, just a final question before we let you go today. If students, kids, adults, anybody across our network or footprint want to get involved in lifeguarding, what is the easiest and most efficient way for them to do that so that we can try and get some bodies in that funnel for you?
Well, they go to their local municipality, and register for learn to swim courses and pre-lifeguarding courses. If you're a really good swimmer, say you're a swim team swimmer, competitive swimmer, you could go right past some of the pre-courses and go right to the lifeguarding courses. So go there, register, and hopefully you can get into a program and you could find this career path, which will be a great job for you.
All right, perfect. Barbara Byers from the Lifesaving Society of Ontario. Thanks for joining us today on Inside the Village. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for having me.
And we're back to wrap Inside the Village, brought to you by True North Mortgage, right after this.
Reporters, editors, and journalists who go the extra mile to get the story and get it right. Go behind the scenes with those who cover the stories that matter most to you and your community. Look for it in the Village Features section of your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
And we're back to wrap another episode of Inside the Village, brought to you by True North Mortgage. True North Mortgage, where you'll get great advice and save a pile of cash at truenorthmortgage.ca. Cheers. Great mugs. Thanks again, guys, for that. There we go.
Got to fill them up for the next show.
Do have to fill
they
them
just
up.
Came in the mail. That's right off the press.
We have to, we got to break them in.
Yes.
We can do that as soon as we leave the studio. truenorthmortgage.ca. You'll get great mugs there, too. Great show today. The airline thing is just a mess. I'll tell you, I would not want to be getting on an airplane anytime soon.
Yeah, reinforced the idea that we're going to take some road trips this summer.
Yeah, I think
air travel. French River Trading Post, here I come.
Absolutely. We'll be right behind you in our vehicle. It's unbelievable, the cancellations, the delays. It's just such a mess.
Part of it I often wonder, and I know everyone's going to get mad at me, but I have to wonder, what is your big rush to get back on an airplane and go somewhere? To be honest, like I see all these people at the airport, and I know some of them it's for business, it's for work, whatever. But I never understood this thing. I can't wait till COVID's over so I can get on an airplane, a dirty, disgusting airplane, and fly somewhere. I don't get it.
Yeah, I know. It's there's two schools of thought, right? I understand that, but I also understand somebody that wants to get to a beach and put their feet up and.
Yeah.
It's like Gábor said, it's going to get likely uglier before it gets better. Kind of like this show. InsideTheVillage.ca is where you can find back episodes, of course, across the Village Media Network. You're laughing. That's
we still getting on the ugly part? Like, when is it going to turn the roller coaster?
Crash and burn.
Go back up the other way.
Talk to you next week.
You too, buddy.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you next Wednesday.
You've been listening to Inside the Village.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe, provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.